Are you a teacher with students with an IEP? Then you've come to the right place. If your student has special education or related services, then you're going to be called into an IEP meeting where the team is all going to look at you and say, how is the student doing? But what do you say and how do you prepare? Take a deep breath. I'm going to walk you through it. That's why inside this video, I'm going to show you the 3 things that you can do so you know what to say and write, why it matters, and most importantly, where that needs to go inside your student's IEP so they and you can get the best help for their needs. What's up? I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate to make IEPs and 504 plans so much easier. If you're new here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button to get more videos like this in your inbox, and check us out on Instagram at Rise Ed Advocacy. So before we dive into what you need to say and how you need to say it and why it matters for your student, let's first get into the basics when it comes to special education. So individual education plans, sometimes known as programs, are also known as IEPs, and they're regulated under both federal and state mandates under something called IDA law. Here's the problem. As the general education teacher, more than likely, you're not going to get regular training. So you know what to say, how to say it, and more importantly, how to get your student and yourself the right educational supports. That's exactly why I'm so happy that you're watching this video. So here's something that you may not know, pro tip. At every single IEP, there must be at least one general education teacher. That means that every time your student has an IEP, no matter what their eligibility or their services or what type of IEP it is, there needs to be at least one teacher, either a teacher that knows your student, such as yourself, or another related professional who has a teaching credential and can speak on behalf of the course curriculum and expectations. Did you know that? So now you know a little bit more when it comes to IEP meetings. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. IEP process, and what does an IEP look like? So as a general education teacher, more than likely, you're probably going to be signing off at the IEP. You're also maybe going to be looking or seeing parts of the IEP when their special education teacher or their case carrier or the related service provider comes and tells you, hey, your student has an IEP. Hey, this is what you're going to be working on. So you need to know how to read the IEP and most importantly, how to get your input on your student's next IEP so you can get them and you the best services that you and they need. So what's really interesting is that as a general education teacher, so many times when you're sitting at the meeting, that part of what you say doesn't get onto the IEP. That's exactly why I'm super excited that you're going to keep watching this video, because I'm going to show you exactly what to look for and how to get it. Make sure to check out our playlist that lays out all the ideas when it comes to special education so you know what to do at an IEP meeting and more importantly, the IEP process. Grab that link in the description box below. So let's dive into why you're watching this video. What do you want to say first when you're sitting in an IEP meeting for your student? The first thing you want to say is, what does it look like? What am I saying? I'm saying that you're going to be laying out the functional academics, meaning what does your child know and what do they not know? What does this mean? This means that you're going to be talking about specifically the curriculum in terms of the underlying and the performance conditions of what it looks like when that student is in your class. You're also going to be avoiding words like can't, won't, doesn't. Why? Because those words don't clarify what it looks like, and they definitely will not help you or your student get better supports and services. So think of it as more like a computer. You're being very clear visually. It's like if someone were to look in your classroom without actually seeing it, and they can read what it looks like. The other thing that you want to think about is why you're saying this. This brings me to the second point. The reason why you want to say what it looks like in terms of functional performance is this creates the baselines for the rest of the IEP that's going to drive IEP development. So when you talk about math, you're going to say the student can do this and needs this and this in order to achieve or access the core curriculum. So that's all that functional academics is. It's really spelling out the underlying and the performance conditions, and more importantly, the content curriculum of how that student is performing in the class and how they are doing in comparison with their typical peers. One of the most important things that you want to talk about and write about is definitely accommodations or modifications. I'll explain why in just a second. Because on the IEP, you want to spell out what that student needs in order to access the support and all the things that you're doing to work with that student. So what am I saying? I'm saying that when I taught kindergarten and I would come to the IEP, I would talk about, okay, I was delivering this accommodation, I was delivering this modification. Here's what I did in the general education class to remediate the child's unique learning needs, and here's what the child found success in. So again, you're identifying the strengths and also the unique learning needs. Now, why does this matter? And more importantly, where are you going to see this? This matters because what you say, like I mentioned earlier, drives the rest of the IEP. Where are you going to see this on the IEP? You're going to see it in the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, also known as PLOF. Notice that I said the word functional performance. So that's you, and as the general education teacher, all of your information in terms of their underlying performance conditions, whether it's a skill deficit or performance deficit, behavior, social, emotional, academics, oh my goodness, all of that is so important. So what you say in the meeting, and more importantly, what you put on the observational forms, will drive the rest of the IEP so that you and your student can get the best help. Speaking of accommodations and modifications, what's the difference? And how do you tell what your student needs? It's one of the biggest challenges at the IEP table. That's why I want you to check out my first free guide that lays accommodations and modifications side by side. So when your team is talking about it, or when you're talking about it, you know exactly what you're talking about, and you know exactly what your student needs. Make sure to grab that link in the description box below. This brings us to the second thing that you need to say at an IEP meeting is, what does the student need to learn, and how will the team support their unique learning needs? Why does this matter? Think about the first thing that you already talked about, right? What does it look like? So you're talking about their strengths and their weaknesses. This second part, you're talking about, what does the student need to do differently, meaning when it comes to accessing the core curriculum and demonstrating progress, what do they need to learn? Why does this matter? Because when you talk about what the student needs to learn, you're going to be helping the team to drive the rest of the IEP in terms of the direction of what are they going to do and how are they going to support the child. So more than likely, if you have a student in your class with an IEP, you're probably going to be doing prompting and cueing, accommodations, modifications, like I already mentioned. But how do you know what kind of prompts and cues the students needs, and what can you choose from? Make sure to check out my free guide that has a prompt hierarchy and lays it out so when you're talking about prompting and cueing, at the IEP for your student. You know exactly what you can recommend, and more importantly, you can show it on a visual guide, so it makes it so much easier for your student and for you to get the right support. Grab that link in the description box below. So now that we've talked about that second thing on the IEP, let's talk about the bigger issue. The bigger issue is, where does that need to be written in the IEP? So when it comes to what the child is going to do differently, this is going to be seen inside the IEP goals and objectives. So remember, the present levels is going to show the baselines of what the child knows and doesn't know, and the IEP goals is going to show the team what the child needs to do and how. So using that prompt hierarchy I talked about, using those accommodations and modifications, your team is supposed to develop IEP goals and objectives from the baseline, and more importantly, from what you talk about, what the student is doing and how they can be better supported. Speaking of IEP goals, have you gotten training on how to write IEP goals, and more importantly, how to read them so that your student can get the best goals that are not crazy? Make sure to check out my video on what's called Smarter IEP Goals, that take that information from you as the teacher and all the other related service professionals and develops IEP goals that are understandable, relatable, and more importantly, based on what your child really needs. Grab those links in the description box below. This brings us to the third thing that you need to say at an IEP meeting. What supports and services does your student need so they can achieve those IEP goals that were just written by your team? Why does this matter? When you're talking about this, it shows the team where those services should be given for your student in terms of the frequency, location, intensity, and type of services that your student needs in order to remediate their unique learning needs and achieve the IEP goals that were just written. The other thing that you want to mention as a general education teacher pro tip is what supports you need in order to work with that student. What am I saying? I'm saying that if you word it the right way in terms of what you're writing and what you're saying, you can get teacher training, consultation, collaboration. Oh my goodness, there are so many supports that you can get and you deserve as a general education teacher. So that's exactly why I'm so excited that you're watching this video, because now you know what to ask for and how to write it on the IEP. Yay! Speaking of writing an IEP, maybe you're watching this video and you're like, you know what, April, I'm a special education teacher, or I'm a general education teacher, or I'm an OT, PT, school psych, and I have to write the IEP. How do I write an IEP that makes it easier so that my students can get the best support? Make sure to check out this video that lays out the 4 tips for success in terms of writing an IEP, and more importantly, how to read it so that it follows IDA guidelines, and more importantly, your student can get the best support. Grab that link in the description box below. So we've talked about you mentioning about the supports and services that your student needs, but where is this on the IEP? Once you talk about it, once you write about it, you're going to be seeing this in 2 different places. So when it comes to services, you're first going to see this in what's called free appropriate public education, or what's called the offer of FAPE. This is going to determine the location, type, and intensity of where the special education or related services are going to take place. The second place that you're going to see this is going to be inside a section called Least Restrictive Environment, also known as LRE. LRE has to do with your student being educated to the maximum extent possible based on their unique learning needs with their non-disabled peers. So what am I talking about? LRE is not a place. LRE is not a service. LRE is what fits best for your child based on the goals, based on the baselines, based on all the stuff we've already talked about. That's the best fit for that student. So now that you have all this information, let me ask you something. Do you feel like you need more tools and tips at the IEP table? I want you to check out something called the Meeting Toolkit. Inside my digital guide that works for both IEPs and 504s, it lays out so many tools and resources when it comes to understanding how to advocate for students like a pro. Lays out all the stuff I already talked about in terms of accommodations and modifications, but more importantly, it's got a section on standardized test scores, what they mean, the IEP process and the IEP cycle, because yes, there is an IEP cycle. And more importantly, when you're sitting at those IEPs as a general education teacher, you can pull this out and you can get your student and yourself the best supports and services for their need. Grab that link in the description box below. So now you know the 3 things that you want to say, and more importantly, how to advocate like a pro for your student when you're a general education teacher. Do you have a question? Make sure to put it in the link description box below. Do you want me to expand on more what I've talked about or do another video? Yep, put it there too. Make sure to grab all those links, information, and definitely that toolkit so that you can walk into your next IEP meeting feeling so much better. Like and subscribe to get more videos like this in your inbox and share with other teachers and friends who need support too. Check us out on Instagram at Rise Ed Advocacy. I'm April Rarig, your special education advocate. I can't wait to see you for our next video.